and welcome to Purposeful Empathy, a show dedicated to conversations with people who want to grow and spread empathy throughout the world. So welcome to this edition of Purposeful Empathy. I am joined by Elif Gokcigdem. Did I get that right?
Perfect.
Great, who is an empathy expert and also the director and founder of Empathy Building Through Museums. Now, I had the opportunity to come to know about your work through writing my own book, and I interviewed you because I was fascinated about your work, and at the time you had written one book, but now I know you're the author of two. Would you maybe first share a little bit about your two books?
Sure. I think when we spoke, it was right after actually, the two books came apart 2 years apart, so it was very close. So the first book is called Fostering Empathy Through Museums. It came out in 2016. And because we discussed this, I'm going to show this. Absolutely. I don't know if you can see it, but this is the first book. And the second one is called Designing for Empathy, and it came out in May last year. Which seems like ages ago now.
Well, congratulations. You've got two under your belt and I'm still working on my first. So I have a girl crush on your productivity. Now, when we had our conversation some years ago, I was profoundly moved by a story that you shared with me. So I know that you have a PhD in Islamic art. You're originally from Turkey. And I asked you if there was something that you learned through your research and through your degree about Islamic art that informed your ideas about empathy. And you told me a beautiful story. So would you mind sharing that?
Sure. I mean, as you know, empathy is usually described as a transactional thing that happens between two people, right? And then, of course, we know if we are interested in art or aesthetics, we know that there's more to that we need to sort of unpack. And with that limited description of empathy, wherever you go, there's always an other. I mean, you're trying to empathize with this group, let's say, which is different from you, different from what the beliefs that you might have. But then you go into another country, then you meet another group who are the other, and my research and my life experience growing up in Turkey taught me that there might be another way of looking at this, which is within the context of interdependency or oneness. And this, when I was doing my research in Islamic arts, there are symbols that are used to convey this concept in Islamic architecture, Islamic art, from the book illustrations to magnificent domes and everything. And the metaphor is the circle. It is believed that that there is only the dot at the center is a non-dimensional beginning of everything. Imagine that that's the origin of all creation, And then the first line to form a line. By definition, it is multiple dots coming together to form a line. But then the first shape is a circle. These are archetypal shapes that we all sort of know them intuitively, that we have a connection. We feel better when we are in a circle, for example. We feel included as when we go into a cathedral or a mosque or any type of like circular yurt, for example. It feels more inclusive, and then the Islamic philosophy side that informs us about this metaphor is that symbolizes the equality of every single dot that exists on that circle. Because of the definition of circle, of course, the what do you call the radiant, I guess, right? The health. I haven't studied math here, or geometry in English, so I don't know any of the terms. So excuse me, but it is in equal distance to each one of the endless dots on the circle, and that creates the concept of oneness, and that has really informed my work and the way I look at the world in general.
I love it because, as you say, everybody on the planet is equidistant to that center dot, that center of source that's given us life. And at the same time, no matter how many dots that there are on the circumference, or no matter how many people there are on the planet, each one has its own unique perspective to source. So our lived experiences inform who we are, but we are all inherently equidistant to our creation and creator. So I just have found that. So thank you for that gift in having shared that with me. And I'm happy to share that out to the world as well. You also had a beautiful experience not long ago where you traveled with a group of fellow museum curators to Dharamsala, India, to spend time with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Could you share what that trip meant for you and some of your takeaways?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was actually, I had just published the first book then, and then I was working on the second book, and which is called Designing for Empathy. So the goal of this book was to figure out, what really creates empathy. We know that it is good for many things, but how do we actually intentionally nurture it, or can we design for it in our personal lives, institutions, or in the society in general, so that when we need it, it is actually available to us, and we know these times that when we most need empathy, usually are the times that we see less in society, in times of, difficulty like the one we are going through now. And so the goal was to bring together a diverse group of thinkers, not just museum curators. There were museum curators, museum directors, exhibition designers, experience designers, IT professionals, theater experts, artificial intelligence experts, and dialogue designers, social entrepreneurs, a wide variety of thinkers, as much as I can, put together, because we were limited by the number that we could take due to logistics of the travel. And of course, the highlight of that experience was our meeting with His Holiness. So we had an appointment with him at, I believe, like 9:45 a.m. On a Tuesday morning. So the entire our travel of these 30 people from all over the world was for that appointment, and that workshop was on the side, and he was so down to earth and comforting, compassionate, and truly an authentically beautiful person, beautiful human being. And we listened to him share his expertise and insights, and then he asked us questions, and then he said, so do you have any questions? And being the organized Westerners we are, we had a list of questions, like the 1, 2, 3, depending on the who asked the questions. And so we had all that planned out, and he said, no, I don't care about formalities, you can just ask whatever you want. And then people, we were all able to ask our questions, and we had I think 45-minute or hour appointment, but it lasted more than 1.5 hours, and it was a great conversation. And my one question that I wanted to take, the whole reason basically I was doing this, in addition to bringing these people together to perhaps create new ways of engagement, to create new types of empathetic experience where we can figure out what is exactly taking place, so we can replicate them in other places, customize them and use them in our everyday lives. The other thing was this question that relates to the circle metaphor about oneness. So His Holiness talks about oneness in his, speeches, and if you follow him, you'll see occasionally that he talks about the oneness of all human beings, that we are all brothers and sisters. And I had a question about oneness, and it was almost like a paragraph long. And before I was able to even ask, he of course mentioned it again, and then he just explained all the things that I had on my mind. And that was my one big takeaway, to hear from him in that setting what oneness means to someone like him. And this is closely related to his lifetime commitments. So we have, these, for example, strategic plans, right? We make 5-year plans, 10-year plans. He said, these are the seeds that we're planting now. We may never see the tree coming out of it, but this is what we must do now. This is a plan for 100, 150 years, and or maybe even longer. And that we are, in fact, all brothers and sisters. We all have the same emotional needs, the care of a loved one, and all those things that we intuitively know. But hearing from him and his, through the filter of his wisdom, just makes a whole lot of difference. And I was going to mention one other thing, but it'll come to me. There was one other thing that I wanted to mention. It'll come to me.
Well, interrupt at any point when it does, and I so empathize with that. Mummy brain is a thing. As a mom of a 4-year-old,
Sure is.
Just out of curiosity, you'd already studied empathy. Then you had this experience, which must have, I think reaffirmed some of your core beliefs. How do you feel about what you see on the immediate horizon, whether we're talking about COVID or climate change or politics, geopolitics? What are you seeing in terms of the need for empathy and the erosion of empathy?
Now that we have lived this collective vulnerability, this is global scale. And I was naively hoping, I guess, like in my work that, if we could, only replicate this in like a larger scale, the sense of vulnerability that can turn into empathy, because you understand that we are all fragile, we all need certain things, and we all get the feeling that somebody pulled the rug under our feet, and this can happen to anybody. But as we know, even this has caused polarization, because this is all depends on how we see the world. That's why I strongly believe when we talk about concepts like empathy or compassion, they have to be sort of nested in the context of oneness. The goal should be empathize or feel compassion as if there's no other.
What you're saying resonates so fully with me, because over the last 10 years, let's say, as I've been studying how empathy can be leveraged for your own personal fulfillment, but also for social transformation. To me, there's like a radical nature to empathy that can be utilized for social progress, social justice, social change. At the same time, I'm coming to realize more and more that there is a truly profoundly spiritual dimension to empathy that also needs to be fully activated. And that's what you're talking about, this idea of interdependence and oneness. And I think those two things can coexist. I think there are so many examples of massive social transformation that has happened when there's been a coupling between praxis and this notion of oneness, and that animates something, a bigger life force that makes change possible. And I think we saw it this spring, and now it's a matter of kind of carrying it forward to ensure that it reaches its potential, right? That's how I feel.
That's right. I think in a way it is growing pains, our understanding of our own humanness, what we are really made of, including all the aspects that we don't always talk about, is a process, and we are growing, and if you throw these lessons at a toddler, she'll react in a different way, but as she grows, she will learn and she will remember. I think humanity as a general, we are perhaps in our toddler stages now about learning and experiencing our own humanity. But one thing that we have that perhaps other generations didn't have is the knowledge of science and technology and arts and physics and all that is, I think we have to find ways to repurpose that knowledge so that it is not just, for the sake of, writing papers or publishing books, but what is it good for humanity? But this doesn't come natural to everyone, and this is, empathy is becoming almost a privilege in our time, because if you are stressed and if you don't have access to comfort, can you really have the luxury to empathize and ponder about these, questions?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because we're all so busy. Our society has created a system where we're constantly moving. Do we have time for the self-reflection that requires? Mm-hmm. What is keeping you busy and excited these days as a empathy enthusiast?
I am working on right now a couple of things, including another empathy summit. So the first summit, with is Holiness, last year we did it in the Washington, D.C., and then this year is going to be virtual. And again, the idea is to bring together people, but this is not a forum as a conference where people just, present and good, one check, it's not like that. It's a workshop. You have to start, participate in the beginning and the end. And I'm learning, because not everybody is responding to this that well as I had hoped. So it's a process in that regards too. But the one thing that I've done, for example, in last year's workshop, is to talk about, this, what I call the alchemy of empathy. Which is mentioned in the Designing for Empathy book. That's the main part of the book, because I believe that if we can unpack, what creates empathy, then we are more intentional in paying attention to each of these values or, ingredients, so that we recognize them and appreciate them, which adds to our own empathy. But then also we can combine them and, maybe create new experiences around them. So I have come up with this metaphor of a water drop for empathy. So I'll just show you this, because I believe these ingredients are not like like puzzles. They don't have sharp edges or boundaries. They just like a water of you just sort of scoop up a little bit water from the ocean. The water in your hand has the exact attributes of the ocean. It is just in a smaller format. So each one of us are like a drop, but when we are together, we are actually a big ocean. We might look very different, act differently, react differently to things, but our essence is one and the same. So what I do is, I created these ingredients, and I said, I figured out from the responses that I received from the contributors to the book, is that none of these, ingredients happen on their own. There's storytelling, which one is this? Collective journeying, contemplation and nuance, synchronicity. The magic is that I figured out at least 3 of these components are together in each, basic empathetic experience. So if there's storytelling, there's usually maybe humor or curiosity at play. In vulnerability, for example, there's proximity or contemplation at play. So it depends on what kind of experience you want to create. We can actually design. So I'm just giving this as an example of something hopefully that can be formulated better by others contributing to this conversation, so that maybe we can create a different framework at looking at empathy and see what we can do with it, because nobody has the prescription. So at the summit, for example, I asked the participants, because I gave them also empty drops, so to fill out, because I was able to only fit, let's say, 13, 14 ingredients. Clearly there is more. And so, for example, one of them was this, selflessness, listen, and inner peace. Equally important. And this one, sharing recipes and cooking together. Mm-hmm. And this one said exchange. So all these ideas add to my work and inform what I should do next. And so that's how it has been going. So I mean, I have the workshop, and I have the summit, and I have a couple of workshops coming up where I try to bring together, again, diverse groups of people. For example, there are some great empathy projects taking place at zoos and aquariums right now about environmental empathy. What can we learn about what they have learned? And what they have learned is really just fascinating, because it turns out we don't empathize with things like, clams and barnacles as much as we empathize with, like cute otters or, dolphins, right? Because they have eyes, they smile, they're cute and cuddly. But what about the others? And then what about minerals? What about the water? What about the air? I mean, we take these for granted as if we are the center of the universe, but history teaches us over and over again, our existence on this planet is merely the time of a breath. And we'll breathe today, gone tomorrow, So what can we do with what we have now is what I'm interested in.
Wow, what a beautiful way of ending. And I would encourage anybody who's curious to understand how to design for empathy to buy your book on Amazon and read it. So thank you so much for taking the time to share your thoughts and expertise with us. Thanks so much for watching.
Thank you.